Manually manually arm it. All right. This is Travis Mawson, and I have Mr. Daniel Quintero, and this is the second episode of Move Motivation, Opportunity, Validation, and Education. Today, on our episode, we're going to be talking a little bit about culture. But to start us out with, Dan, if you could just kind of give us a little bit of fill in the blanks on what is Move, why Move, and kind of what are we doing here?
Yeah, so I want to repeat myself after last week and just make sure some of the people that are on may not have been on last week that they understand what Move's all about. Um, so the first part of Move, the letter M stands for motivation. So what we're going to try and bring each week is our own stories we've heard from other people, and sometimes we will have guests that join us and share their stories. So we like sharing a lot of stories, and so we make sure that you guys are relating to our life. The biggest motivations I get when I see stuff on Facebook or when I'm in a room with somebody or I'm talking to somebody is when they're sharing a story. And I'm like, wow, I don't feel so bad about my life right now because of what they're going through. I can identify that someone has situations going on in their life that I can relate to, or someone that's elevating me because what they're going through and showing me a different path opposed to what I've always done in the past. So we like to include motivation in that. Opportunities. Again, we'll occasionally have a guest or we'll have something we'll share on screen or share in the chat that you guys can retain and keep, where it might be an employment opportunity or it might be a service opportunity of some sort where you can use it in your own personal life or in your business to help you with that. The third one's always my favorite, validation. And it makes it a little bit unique because when you're in a business type setting, whether it's a networking group or an actual business, the word validation, the word I always associate with it is the word love, and loving on your people, loving on each other, being there for them, supporting them, uh, uh, validating what they're doing and moving them forward. The last one's education. Travis and I are very big about education. We're always sharing with each other stuff that we see on the internet and that is educational purpose. Sometimes it's real estate related, sometimes it's not. But that's the genius behind Move. We're here every Thursday, and we're going to do this every Thursday in 2025. And what's really important, why I wanted to share this tonight, this isn't just business related. This isn't just real estate related. We want to make sure that when you join us, that when you come into this room with us, you're coming with a complete open mind about yourself personally and professionally and what we're going to share with you. It isn't just about learning how to sell a house or how to buy a house or anything that has to do with the dollar amounts or numbers. It has more to do with personal relationships and how that helps you in your personal and professional life. So that's Move in a nutshell.
Yeah, so it's awesome. I got into personal growth and development because I was in real estate. I was an IT entrepreneur for 20 some years before that, but my IT business never really worked on relationships. A lot of it is I was the guy that they were calling, and it's like, Travis, the building is now on fire. Please put out the fire, and here's a check of however much money it is that we require to get this fire put out. Um, and so in real estate, when I got into real estate, it was explained to me is that, we work in relationships. And so I started developing these relationships, and one of my relationships that's been great is with Dan. And one of the topics that I wanted to discuss with you tonight, it's a very common word that a lot of companies use. I've heard it at in real estate. I've worked for some of the biggest companies in the face of the planet. Toyota, Eli Lilly, Walmart. And so all of these companies that I've worked for over the course of my professional career have always had a different culture. Some of the cultures you and I have talked about have not necessarily always been a great culture because they maybe promote an atmosphere where people are butting heads with each other in one particular instance, or where they're not necessarily always acting in the common good. And so I wanted to start the topic of what is culture, what does it mean, and how does it actually play out? How does it manifest itself when it comes to partly our lives, our business lives, and then when we're actually treating people, how do we treat people is really what it boils down to a lot. And so I think we found a dictionary definition of it, and I don't know if you remember what we found when we looked it up in the dictionary.
Yeah, yeah. So I wrote it down. So we have a base point to start from. Culture. One of the definitions I found for it: culture is the shared behavior, values, and beliefs of a group of people. And whether you're talking 3 to 5 people, or you're talking hundreds or thousands, or you're talking over 300 million, like we have in this country. The word culture gets used a lot when we talk about the founding of this country, in the last 250 years history of this country and our culture, and all the different aspects of it. Something I find interesting is culture's very, very difficult. And what I mean by that is, I learned a long time ago, and I'm not sure that it was even in real estate, but there was a class or seminar I was in somewhere, and someone said this to me. I don't even remember who it is anymore, but it stuck to me. And I use this all the time when I'm teaching real estate. If you're in a place where there's more than 2 people, if it's 3 or more, the communication breaks down very quickly, the ideas break down very quickly, and the different paths that people want to go in are very different. So I'll give you an example of all the real estate transactions that I've done. When it required decisions to be made by more than just 2 people, the transaction becomes very complicated very quickly. And the belief system, that's part of what's in the definition of the word culture, is the belief system that people have. It can be very dynamic, going from 2 to 3 people. When we get married, there's a reason why culturally, for most cultures, when you get married, it's only between 2 people. And to have, and I have clients that buy houses with family members, and some of them wind up on the contract and they're part of the decision making process. And sometimes they butt heads, and it makes it very complicated. And the reason why I'm talking about this in the context of culture, is that we talk about a group of people. And usually, when you're talking a business, corporation, a town, whatever it may be, the cultures become very dynamic and sometimes very conflicting. And so, the organization that we work with, Epic Realty, this is one of the main reasons why both Travis and I decided to come to Epic Realty, because it comes down, and it's not just with Epic Realty, but this is true for every place, a country, a company, a business. It comes down from the very top. The culture is established from the very top, and the leadership that surrounds the very top person at the top. And I'll give an example. I was watching ESPN. I don't know. I think it was yesterday. And they were talking about all the new coaches in the NFL. There's like 4 or 5 new coaches, and they were doing interviews with them as they became the new coaches of these teams. And when you become a new coach of a new team, you're trying to display, obviously, a lot of optimism. You're trying to set a precedent as to how things are going to happen with this team as you're taking it over. You're the leader of the team, and you want to set a certain culture. And what I find amazing about this is that some leaders are very good at this, and some other leaders aren't so good at it. I'll give an example. As I was watching these coaches, that one coach came to mind for me is Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh was an NFL coach, a very successful NFL coach. He left the NFL ranks after making it to the playoffs several times. And then he went to coach at his alma mater, the University of Michigan. And after several years, I think he was there for 5 or 6 years. In last year, in 2024, they won it all. Then he went back to the NFL. In his first year in the NFL, he took his team to the playoffs. So the reason why I'm bringing this person up and giving you an example of a leader that I believe can establish a great culture no matter where he goes, because he has the history to prove it. He was in the NFL, he left, he went to coach in the college football, and he was very successful there. And he went back to the NFL. In his first year in the NFL, he had a lot of success. So the point I'm making, the people at the very top that are trying to get people to follow them and create a great culture, it matters at the very top. When it falls apart at the very top, um, it doesn't go well. So culture is tied to success. When you have a great culture, generally speaking, there's a lot of success that surrounds it. That's why culture is so important. And so, and you have teams, in baseball, in basketball, in the NFL, you have many teams culturally year after year. They're lucky if they finish 500, and they just never get past that point culturally. They can make themselves successful, and it has all to do with who's leading from the top. So having a great culture has to do with your leadership that you're following.
Yeah. So
And when the leadership, go ahead.
I was just gonna say this. You hit on something that I just thought was really profound for me. Is that so? You have your top down leadership, right? And then at some point you start evaluating the leadership, and you're saying, is this a leadership align with what my vision is for my business? And can I work with this? And then eventually you start this John Maxwell thing, kind of this hit this lid where you hit up against this lid of the leader that you're with. And then you're like, well, they can't lead me anymore. I've grown up to where they are. And then now we need to seek bigger leadership, a bigger vision, and go to the next level. And if you're getting in, I think about this a lot as the rooms that you're in. If you're the smartest person in the room, you need to get into a better room, right? And then you also mentioned the idea of coaching. And I think this is really important because a lot of people look at me and they say, Travis, what is coaching? Or they don't understand exactly the concept of it. And if you're from outside of the real estate industry, this is something that's pretty prevalent in our business. A lot of people look for coaching in different things. But if you're in other industries, you've never heard of coaching. When I was working at a W-2 job and I suggested to my coworkers that they employ the idea of going to coaching, they looked at me like I was crazy. But this morning, I saw an Olympic figure skater on TV on the news, and she was talking about her coach. And fun fact about Olympians is they all, with the exception of like a couple people, they all have a coach. Some of them have better coaches than other ones, but that mindset of you have to be receptive to being coachable. And then the coach, like I think you said this, is they have demonstrated capacity to coach. So anybody can call themselves a coach. And you and I are working with a guy right now that's got a master's degree in teaching. And that's a great foundation. And I know you had a desire to be a teacher. We talked about this in the last episode, is you wanted to be a teacher, but you got talked out of it by the guidance counselor. And I always wanted to be a teacher, but what qualifies you to be a teacher? There's a lot of various degrees of what qualifies you to be a teacher, but getting back to the culture thing is it starts at the top, and then if it's not being driven down and it's not coming down to the people, it becomes immediately obvious, and you're like, well, we're not really a good team. You can feel it when you're not a good team.
Well, what's critical? So when I first got into business in '95, I was part of an incredible culture. The organization that I was a part of led in all numbers as far as production was concerned, and was very progressive as far as being ahead of the curve as far as things they brought to Northeast Indiana. But what was integral about it is the leader that led that group didn't just say the things that he taught us; he actually lived it out in front of us. His door was always open. You could walk into his office. It was very rarely closed. And he was always willing to listen and educate and teach. And he did it by example so much. He was always walking the room, always shaking hands, always giving hugs, always having a good time. And the only time I saw him talking negatively about anybody was behind closed doors when he had to share something that was very private about what was going on. Other than that, it was like a party. Matter of fact, I remember at one time that agency being called the jungle because it was an open concept, an open bullpen where everybody could talk to each other across the room. And matter of fact, that company merged with another company, and that was one of the things the other company said about us at one time. Was like the jungle, you guys over there, the jungle, you guys are just crazy over there. Well, I can tell you the people that work there just loved being there, loved being a part of that. And I mean, it was amazing to be a part of. And so since then, I've been a part of other cultures, and I know the difference. I know the top of the top, and I know what that looks like, and I know where I'm at now. The leaders of this companies aspire to the same thing. I've met the leaders, and I know where their heart is and what they're trying to do, and how much they're actually giving back to their agents. It's amazing. So that's culture. They're not just saying it to try and impress you and do the bait and switch on you where they suck you in and they go, oh, so I didn't really mean that. I mean,
Well,
that destroys a culture so fast. I've seen that. I've actually had that happen to me where promises were made, and then within weeks or months, you're going like, do they mean anything?
a
They
lot
said
of
they were going to
times,
do.
a lot of times they put things on the wall. So
Yeah.
I'm wearing my Toyota shirt right now. Toyota has the thing called the Toyota Way, and it's a multi-million dollar thing. And there's definitely things, there's valuable things that can be learned out of that. And there's also helpful criticisms of it because it doesn't always disseminate through the organization. You talked about having the open office. So we had an open office there where I was within arm's length of the president and the vice president, and I was right near senior leadership. But I didn't, one of the Toyota ways is to create a home-like atmosphere at work. And I didn't always feel like I had a home-like atmosphere at work. And sometimes at certain brokerages, I felt like maybe they were too big or maybe they were too small. I've had a little bit of both. I started at on the small scale, and then I went to the biggest size scale. And now I feel what's great about Epic now, what I love is I can text the CEO and I feel like he walks the walk. And he stands for the people that are in the business, that are in the trenches on the day to day, not standing for a stockholder necessarily that has a different interest that makes it's so easy for me to make the right decisions because I know that the culture of our team is, and that our relationship, you and I, is we're always going to do the right thing for the customer. And I think that, what I've seen so far is that we're now in an organization that what's the right thing for the agent and the customer too. But we're always going to act with that. And we I've so far everything I've seen is hey, look, we don't want to recruit people that don't fit this. We don't want people that don't match this culture. And so now we've had to actually build the wall to help protect that. And so that's the second big question that I wanted to bring up with you and discuss is what is the cost of culture? And I would suggest that the cost of culture is everything.
Yeah. Well, um, I think it's interesting when Josh he adds to the contract that we signed to join here. He makes it very clear that you know there's there's a certain behavior, which is one of the things that's on here, culture, the shared behavior. So he adds this to the contract. There's a specific behavior I expect, and you're going to sign this contract, and this is how you're going to behave. That's what's interesting about it. And so it starts from there, from the very beginning. This is what we expect from the top. And so, what we sacrifice, we might sacrifice in numbers. We may never be the largest agency. He doesn't even care about that. He wants to make sure for the people that are here that he can retain them as best as possible because of what he's given back to them and the culture and the environment that he's creating. So, yeah, I'm pretty selective. I mean, I've shared this story quite a bit with quite a few people. What's happening here, but I've held back a little bit. When I first joined the other agency I was just with, man, I was trying to blow it up so fast. That's part of what they were about. And it was just kind of instilled in me. We're here. That's not quite as important. What's more important here is our culture. We're doing the right thing by our agents and our clients every day. And again, when you have more than three people, and we have way more than three people, there's always going to be different opinions about how certain things need to happen. That's why it's so important when it comes down from the very top. So when there's conflicted messages, there's conflicting ideas, it always comes down from the top. It's a shared behavior, it's a shared value, and it's a shared belief system. And it's very difficult. As the years go by and we get bigger and bigger and bigger, I know there's always going to be challenges along the way with people that didn't fit in, either left on their own or were asked to leave. And but so you're asking about the sacrifice of the loss in the culture is we're going to lose some people for sure. We're definitely going to have some people that don't come, and that's okay. That's okay. I'd rather be someplace where over time it eventually becomes well known that this is a place to be where all the agents that are here are treating the other agents well. That's something that I've always emphasized in this business for a very long time. It's something I was taught when I first got in this business is that you always treat the other agents very well. It's very critical. And treating your clients is natural, but treating your clients well is natural. Treating other agents well isn't always taught by other agencies, isn't always that important by other agencies. We're here, what we're doing and what I've always done is I've always tried to put my best foot forward with the other agents because we're in a shared community. We're all independent contractors. We're all in this together, and to treat them the right way.
IT doesn't function necessarily that way. It's definitely a competitive and cutthroat industry, and it's funny because I actually had a little bit of a shift perspective during the pandemic in my IT business, which is that I used to always just think that's my competitor. I gotta go get them, and I gotta go beat them. And the interesting thing is my business has actually flourished in the last couple of years. We're probably approaching $500,000 of business now. And I got it from other managed service companies, other providers that I could have, they could be viewed as my competition, in a more traditional sense. But it's actually working out for me better.
Yeah. Well, basically, the reason why this even came up tonight was because it was a question asked of us from last week, and I thought it was important. We both thought it was important to address, and um, you know, so we're sharing it with people that are listening or watching, and understanding that when you share space, personally, privately, or professionally with other human beings, especially when it's more than just one other person. Now there's three or more. You're in a culture, and understand that the dynamics of your relationships change dramatically. And you're sometimes in a room where people have a very different idea of what culture is, what their belief system is. So how do you learn? You have a format of where you come from culturally, from your family, from your upbringing, from your education, from your religion, where you go to church. You have all these instilled in you over time. So when you're put in a situation where you're dealing with more than just one other person, and you're in a room with three or four or 100 people, and the culture is very different. And how do you bring your culture into that room and blend in and not become a problem because you don't agree with what's happening in that room? I've been in rooms before where I was very uncomfortable. It was like, do I get out of this room or do I blend? Do I try to blend in? There's been times where I'm like, man, I don't belong here at all. I'm very uncomfortable. And sometimes I stuck it out and actually it was okay. And actually, I feel like I grew from it. There's other times where I had to escape.
Right. Well,
So it's just weird.
so I stick myself in rooms, this. I put myself in rooms that I probably sometimes I don't belong in, and I stick myself in situations that sometimes I get myself a little bit ahead of myself. And the world has a way of course correcting you back, but I kind of feel like, to be honest with you, the last year I've been on an island, and I I kind of did this to myself because I had this idea in November last year. I got this idea that I'm going to be this big team leader in real estate, right? I'm like, look, I'm going to go do this thing. I'm going to create this team. And I sat down and I kind of shared a little bit of my design. And then you laughed at me and you're like, damn, these people are or Travis, these people are independent contractors. They're not going to do things the way they want to do. So your little book is cute, but it's not going to work in real estate. And, over the course of the last year, I sat there by myself and I tried in vain a lot to try to design the team that I wanted to be on. And I have a couple different times walked out on amounts of money that most people would be like, Travis, are you insane? You walked away from 150, $20,000 a year or whatever, the course of the however much money it is, a lot of money. Last year I made more money than I've ever made in my life. But I also left two great, what people would consider great opportunities, because it wasn't what I would consider a great cultural alignment for what I wanted to do. And yeah, I was telling somebody, I was like, I can't believe you sold your family out for 100 grand. And they're like, Travis, you're here too. But I was there with a mission. I had an idea. I wanted to try to set a tone. I wanted to try to set a culture. But if you're dealing with a multi-billion-dollar global conglomerate, it's very difficult to move a battleship around. So you have to do the dance, and you have to kind of fit in with the culture that they have, right? I'm an entrepreneur by heart, and so in my entrepreneurial businesses, I get to set a lot of how things are done, and then I go into large global multinational conglomerate companies, and I try to uh, get them to make decisions and do things the way that I'm used to, and they're not as flexible. Let's just put it that way. But
Well, I think it's interesting. I want to speak up here because I think it's interesting when you were talking about doing teaching. You've been in business as a realtor a little over a year, and you want to start teaching all these classes. And I try to tell you, Travis, I didn't even consider teaching another agent how to do this business until my 8th year in the business. And even then, when the idea was presented to me, Dan, would you consider being a sales manager and a trainer? And I'm just like, I wasn't looking for that, but the more I thought about it and the more it was planned out and trial and error and going into it and starting to do it, I fell in love with doing it. But what I'm trying to say is, um, you understand the place that you're at and where you're at. And what I mean by that is, to become a teacher in this business, I think some people can do it fairly quick, but I can't see being legitimately doing it until you've been in the business for at least 3 or 4 years. And you've done 100, 200 deals, 100 deals, 200 deals, 300 deals, or whatever. Um, a lot of it would just be teaching from what you learn in books and seminars. There's nothing like teaching from what you've learned on the street. And that's how I teach. I've learned some stuff in books and seminars, but when it comes to the real estate business itself, as far as how to do contracts and how to deal with clients and how to deal with agents, that came from trial and error and the mistakes I made along the way that were painful.
well,
And don't
leadership is
forget.
hard. I never
Well,
understood.
that's the point I'm trying to make. If you want to lead a corporation or a team or whatever, and you want to create your own little culture, your own little environment, I get that. That's exactly what we're doing with this podcast.
It's so
But the
hard
point,
because people, they they don't want to change.
well, you know, change is hard for anybody. People only move every 5 to 7 years for a reason, on average. They don't do it every year. Most people don't move every year because when you physically move, it disrupts your entire life. I mean, it disrupts everything, and it takes time to reacclimate to the new place you've gone to. So people aren't looking forward to change. So we
Yeah.
have all these great, wonderful ideas we want to share with people, and for a lot of it, they're being forced to change their way of thinking, and it's a belief system. Part of the culture is a belief system. It says it right here in the definition. One of the words is the beliefs. So we bring someone into our podcast or somebody into where we work at with Epic Realty. It's a certain belief system. We're here to be servient and helpful as much as we possibly can. And we take that into our real estate world. And that's all part of the culture.
Yeah. And I like that. I think people ask, okay, the question was asked, and I want to answer this. They're like, why change brokerages? Okay. Couple things is it's hard to change brokerages. It's not something that I just wave my magic wand. I think I've talked to you about this. It's at least for me, a $5,000 decision to change. And I didn't necessarily really want to change. However, I made this analogy like a last week or something, and some people missed it. But when you see something that's new and it's great, right? I tell people this. Once I show this to you, you can't unsee it. And I'm going to share this to kind of close this out because we're probably approaching our time here. Is the mind, once stretched by a new idea, never returns to its original dimensions. And this is a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote. And I've heard this a couple different times from a couple different people. And the thing about it is it's just you when I sat down and I explored the opportunity to switch brokerages, I really didn't want to change. But I saw something that they were creating something that was new and exciting for me. And I was kind of getting to the point, to be honest with you, where I was getting a little bit burned out on real estate at the end of 2 years. And I just finished my post education. So I'm officially good for a while. I paid my NAR dues for 2025, so I ain't going anywhere. I got a couple agents that are joining. So very exciting day. My first agent joined today, and I got a couple other agents that'll hopefully be joining behind them. And so my goal is really to support them, to expose them. And you kind of alluded to this. Well, a lot of agents, it takes 8 years before they start training or doing anything like this. Thankfully, I had some sales training and I got lucky from other businesses that I was in. So I had that experience. And I don't necessarily talk about real estate as much as, you know, about understanding that this is a business. A lot of people think that it's easy. And it is definitely not easy to be in this business, but I think if you have the right culture of people that support you and coach you and mentor you and tell you what you need to do, and maybe there's not always a credit card reader attached to that request, I think that's helpful for you, right? If you want to be successful, that's what you need.
Oh, well, that's ironically the culture that with the organization we're at now. That's what makes it so beautiful because we do get a lot of stuff added into our incentive program of what's given to us. Where a lot of places, not just in the real estate world, but there's a lot of places where that would cost money, and it creates a wonderful culture. You can't help but be excited to be a part of that, where the people from the top are like, "Here's all the tools you should have always been given." When I spoke to one of the co-founders back when I was first considering coming here, I challenged her with all the stuff that was being given. This is impossible. She kind of chuckled a little bit and she goes, "Well, Dan, in the beginning it wasn't, but now the amount that we've grown, we always have set this up so much is given back to the agents." And why wasn't it always like that? She said. She asked me that question, Dan. Why, as long as you've been in the business, why wasn't it like that in the beginning? And I go, well, I don't know. I just told what we were what we were given, and we've just been kind of conditioned that way, and we just kind of accepted it. Here you guys come along, go, hey, we're giving everything to you, and it's like you can't do that.
There's a
It's natural
theory.
to go and challenge that. And then
There's
all of a sudden, I realized this culture that they're creating from the very top. That is part of their culture. It's like, look, we know we're different. We're designed different. We want to be different. And we want you to challenge us. We want you to disbelieve us and let us show you that this is real. I like you did your post when you first got your car wash. You're like, oh my God, look at this. Right? And the same thing with your sign when you got your billboard.
I
You
was
think to open a
excited and
billboard,
I
and the billboard is in a high traffic area. You posted that, you're like, oh my God.
I didn't know what I didn't
Right?
know. I didn't know what I didn't
Yeah.
know. And to your point is that why wasn't it offered from the beginning? Well, ask yourself this. In a business where 80% of our peers quit, and then I just saw that 75% of us didn't sell a house last year, but they all had to pay money. They had to pay money for dues, they had to pay money for things that they were in this business. If they're paying money to be in the business, they should be selling houses. And it's, I don't want to say it's easy, but if you do the right things in this business, you will sell homes because people, no matter what the market is, are buying and selling homes every single day, regardless. So if it's just not with you, that's the only thing, they're just missing it. And I'll close with this. As I said this too, is I don't watch the news. So a lot of people have been, it was a bad day for me. I think I found out probably lost about $100,000 a year today. But I still am very happy. I'm very optimistic about the future. We're gonna pivot somehow. Things will all work out. And in today's world, where I think we should all try to support each other and help each other. I think that's the culture that we should have, and not be divisive anymore. So that's what I'm gonna close with.
Fantastic.
All right, Dan. Well, thank you guys so much. Check us out. This is gonna be on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok, all the socials. We do this every Thursday at 9 a.m. If you're interested in joining us, send me a DM. And next week's topic, it's going to be exciting. We're going to have week 3 of the podcast. We'll get that announced here, and I'll look forward to seeing you all soon. So have a good day.
See you guys.